Hey everyone, welcome back to another edition of WST Bombers Report. My name is Hrabchak. Soon I'm going to be joined by Zach Schnitzer from Bonfire Sports Winnipeg, and together we're going to break down the Bombers' wild 30-27 win over the Ottawa Redblacks. So many angles to attack this game, but the Bombers improved to 5-4 at home at Princess Auto Stadium in front of 32,000 plus. The Bombers' 10th straight sellout. They've already sold out their 11th straight, with their next home game being the Banjo Bowl. But going back to Thursday night, Zach, what an absolutely crazy game that the Bombers come out on top of. Sergio Castillo with a walk-off field goal. How are you doing after that wild one Thursday night at Princess Auto?
Well, you know how humid it was that night,
Oh,
right? At the end of the game, when Pimpleton returns that missed field goal, 117 yards, they tie the game, and then Zach throws a bomb to Demski. It gets picked off. Like, I was literally sweating buckets. Like, I know that's like a cliche sort of turn of phrase, idiom, whatever. I was actually sweating buckets. Like, there were buckets of sweat and I was like, this can't be happening again. Not only, were we a couple years removed from the infamous Crumb back, where Dustin Crum brought Ottawa back by 16 points and beat us in overtime in the fourth quarter. There's last week where we were also up by 17 points and we lost it on a walk-off field goal. I'm like, are you like, this can't be happening? So it was sweat mixed with disbelief, shock. It was insane. But then, sometimes winning covers all those warts. And if you win, it's like, well, I guess we did what we had to do to win and played well, but we're gonna chop that up in this show, buddy. Because as you said, there's lots of angles to attack this wild CFL game. As of course, this is why we love the CFL.
absolutely. The crazy football league, as many people call it, was on full display on Thursday night at Princess Auto. As the Bombers jumped out to a 17-0 lead for the second straight game, and I tweeted out right when they hit the 17-0 lead, now it's time for them to finish this one off. And they did, to their credit. I mean, if you want to just look at the final score, Mike O'Shea said after the game, they're not changing the score now. And they did. They hung on. I mean, that Ottawa eventually tied the game, and then Zach Collaros, 17-yard scramble, out route to Nick Demski. Sergio Castillo kicks the walk-off, but still a ton of concern coming out of this game, Schnitzy. I do want to start with the good, though, because after a win, I don't feel like we should come in here and, bash the team for the bad decisions late in the game or the negativity side of things. So where are you at? The Bombers win, maybe some standout performers, some of the biggest reasons why they won. What are some of the good things you saw on Thursday night as the Bombers improved to 5-4?
I appreciate that you're starting with the good because you know what, Connor? I think there's a lot of good. Well, I mean, let's look at the different phases of the game. The biggest concern, I think, for you and I and many fans and media folks, and probably the coaches and players too, was our secondary, right? You've got Jamal Parker that's out. You have Terrell Bonds that's out for the year, right? And you're bringing Cam Allen in. You saw Jake Kelly really struggle. So they were changing things around. You had Lawson starting only his second game, right? And and who's the guy on the other side? Lawson, and then Vavel. Vavel's coming in to start for the first time on corner. And then Drew Brown comes into the game having thrown 373 yards and 5 touchdowns against the Argos coming back from a 21-point deficit. You and I were talking like, are we going to get shredded for like 500 yards by Drew Brown, who can sling the rock, right? With those receivers that Ottawa has, like Addison, Eugene Lewis, Justin Hardy, like they've got some dogs there on receiver. And what happens is outside of one 40-yard explosion play on Lawson, like in Ottawa's first drive, Connor, they didn't give up an explosion play. And even that play, it wasn't one of those busted coverages that we've seen so often this year. Lawson was going for the ball. It was a good play by Hardy. It was a great throw. I don't have a problem with that. Then you get a couple of very iffy PI calls on Cam Allen. And I mean iffy,
Oh,
very iffy. Now, one of them, even O'Shea said he got there before the ball, but even then, like that down the sideline, the second one. But outside of that, like the defense allowed 20 points to a decent offense in Ottawa, right? And I know some of that game was Dustin Crum, but Dustin Crum played well, actually. So I thought that, the defense had an interception. They, by Evan Holm, they had a goal line stand, right? Like, I thought the defense acquitted itself very well, and they got a 2-and-out with about 35 seconds left when Ottawa had a chance to get their own walk-off in the fourth quarter after Zach threw that bomb to Demski, and it was intercepted. They caused it 2-and-out, albeit Bob Dice decides to run a draw on second and long. So I don't know if he was playing for overtime. We can talk about that later. But I thought the defense did great. If I quickly go to the offense, this is an offense we talked about last week that was scoring one touchdown a week per game. You can't win in the CFL like that. They got 3 touchdowns. Now, a couple of those drives were shorter fields with interceptions and the blocked punt by my new favorite player and almost namesake Tanner Schmekel. But Connor, like the offense had 3 touchdown drives. Collaros, I thought, had a really good game. Darren and I debated this last night on Bonfire. You could argue he had a really good game. You could argue there were some warts there, but he slung it for almost 300 yards. He had a touchdown. That was a really sick pass to Stearns, a jump ball in the end zone. He had a couple of nice passes to Demski. I liked what Hogan did, got outside the pocket, did some play action, and they won. The offense was effective in spite of Ottawa shutting down Brady Oliveira. I think he had like a 3-yard average. Like they really shut Brady down, and the other receivers came to me. Last thing I'll say about the offense, you had other guys than Nick Demski step up. Demski was unreal. This guy should be in the top 5 at least for top Canadian league. He had 128 yards. He was amazing. But you had guys like Stearns at 50 yards. You had Wheatfall chipping in with almost 70 yards and a couple of tough catches. I think Wheatfall had something stuck in his craw, and he was like, "I'm going to stay on this team, and I'm going to prove that I should be here." So, and then last thing, Connor. Sorry to write a novel here, but I thought the special teams were excellent. Now, did they allow Khalil Pimpleton to tie the game 117 yards? Yeah, but like you're asking your big team from midfield to stop a burner like that. Like I don't put that on special teams. We can talk about that decision later. I thought Jamison Sheehan had the best game of his career, Connor. He had a 43-yard net on punts. That's insane. Like just to put that in context, I had the CFL stats up a second ago. It looks like I lost. Oh no, here we go. The highest average net yard punt in the CFL over the first 9 games here is like 39. Like not even 40. 43 is a crazy number. I know it's a punter, but I just thought all 3 phases did really well. They had the punt block on special teams. Those are my positives, and they did enough to win.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of your positives, especially the defensive side of the ball. I do want to bring up, I've brought up the stats after every single game, and the biggest things are these last 2 categories. We look at this every single week, the big plays and the turnovers. And you touched on the defense and the secondary there. The first drive of the game, Lawson is on, I believe it was Justin Hardy or maybe it was Braylon Addison who went up and skied that ball and took it 30 plus yards, which constitutes a big play. Outside of that, the secondary I thought had a great game. And the second half, you can maybe nitpick the defense a little bit in their inability to get off the field on second down, but I honestly pin that more on the offense not putting drives together and giving the defense a break from being on the field the entire time. So it's a little bit of both. The offense had a lot of 2-and-outs, and then late in the third quarter, Schmekel gets a sack as well, putting the Bombers' offense in good field position off the punt, and they score. That's complimentary football. The punt block, they score off that play. That a lot of complimentary football was seen in this game. The 2 turnovers, I will say, Zach Collaros interceptions. The first one I really didn't like, especially at the end of the half. In field goal range, up 20-3. Ball is behind the receiver. Chance to go up 23-3. That one I didn't really like. The second one was a shot to Nick Demski. He had a step. It was tie game with 40 seconds left, so they're trying to swing the field. It was risky, but I liked it. Demski was open. Demski's your best receiver. He's one-on-one. He's stretching the field. I didn't hate that one. But as for Zach Collaros, I share your thoughts. I thought he had a great game. I thought when he was outside of the pocket, he was making the right decision with the ball. He stood in and made some big throws on second and longs that really changed the outlook of this game. And then it gets down to it in crunch time, which is not Zach Collaros' fault. The last 3 minutes that the Bombers got in this scenario. I mean, the pick was because it was a little underthrown on Nick Demski, but the 2nd and 3 call and the surge 57-yarder, Collaros didn't have anything to do with those and the return touchdown. And then he comes out and has a 17-yard run, gets the Bombers at around midfield, and then a strike out route to Nick Demski that puts the Bombers in field goal range for Sergio Castillo to walk it off. I didn't think Zach had like a perfect game or his best game of his career or anything like that, but he played well enough to win. And it was a step forward from what we've seen throughout this season from Zach Collaros. Another thing on the positives that I want to bring up as I bring up the Bombers depth chart is number 0, Cam Allen, over there at free safety. So both of the pass interference penalties, which I think you and I, Zach, and a lot of Bombers fans can agree were bogus calls. Both of them were on Cam Allen guarding Braylon Addison. I thought Cam Allen was flying around. He played, I want to say, I mean, just, I don't have the snaps in front of me or the tracking. I was not tracking this at Princess Auto Stadium. But if I had to ballpark it, I'd say Cam Allen played about half of the 1st and 10s in this game. But in obvious passing situations, they would sub out a Jake Thomas. They would sub out a Devin Adams, go 3 down linemen, and then bring Cam Allen in the secondary. And there were a lot of plays. I mean, Evan Holm had the pick. There was one where Dietrich Nichols undercut the route and tipped it up, and Cam Allen and Evan Holm were very close to picking that off too. And you go back to the one big play that I mentioned earlier. That's the lowest amount the Bombers have allowed in a game since week 4 against the Edmonton Elks with Trey Ford starting at home. And we know how much the Bombers dominated that game. But for them to put forward a performance this good, and I said it on Friday's edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily, I'm not here to say that Cam Allen is the savior of the secondary and all is good. No need to worry about the secondary whatsoever. There's still major question marks there, but they needed a performance like this, a strong performance, a confidence building performance, to take going forward, because going forward, I don't know who's starting for Montreal next week. We'll get into that later on in the episode. But then you get Saskatchewan back-to-back. Then you get Hamilton. These are, good passing attacks. And if the Bombers secondary was struggling going into that, they're going to get shredded. But now there's at least a little bit of hope that this secondary can put together a performance like they did in this game, which again, by no means perfect, but only one big play against, an interception. Tony Jones got the big stop on the goal line. Cam Allen looked, he was flying around making plays. The PIs I thought were both good plays where he was just in a good position. So those are my positives on the game. I think Zach Collaros was strong. I think Jason Hogan was a bit better as well in his play calling.
Yeah.
The secondary, the D line, I want to shout out. In the first half, they were wrecking the game. I mean, Willie Jefferson drew a massive holding penalty. Devin Adams was flying around. Jake Thomas was in there a few times. Vaughters even got some pressure. They were moving Drew Brown out of the pocket. He had to get on the run because the D-line was making things happen, and that's something we outlined as a key last week. But Zach, let's get into maybe the bad. The fact that this game was tied, I think, is the bad, because it was 27-13 at the 3-minute warning, and that was with, by the way, Ottawa kicking a field goal from 27-10 to make it 27-13 on a 3rd and maybe half a yard. I sit in section 208. I have a very good view when the refs spot the ball and where it is. And, Justin Crum was running onto the field and then ran back onto the field. Are we going for it? And then ran back. It was 3rd and maybe half a yard, maybe a full yard. And they decided to make it a 14-point game instead of go for it and then go eventually maybe get a touchdown. I mean, they were in Bombers territory. And that maybe would have changed the game, because Khalil Pilkington's touchdown then would have been to give them the lead had they converted on that. But anyways, where are you at on the last couple of minutes there? 2nd and 3, they push Streveler. They decide to kick the field goal. Pippleton runs it back. Very next snap, Collaros throws a pick, going to Demski deep. Defense gets a stop, credit them. And then Valvo gets a little bit of a return. Collaros scramble, Demski catch. Castillo field goal, game over. But the 2nd and 3 and the first Castillo field goal, where are you at on that?
Yeah. So it's interesting, like, and then that's why I love doing the both the post game show on Bonfire and then doing this show, a little while later when you've had a chance to think about it, for your emotions to calm down, to do a little research, and the way I think about that Castillo field goal, it's like high risk, high reward. Like if you're in a boxing match and you have better cardio than your opponent, and you see the other guys wearing down, and you know that, hey, if I connect on a haymaker, I can knock him out. I have a 61% chance of knocking him out. But if I miss on that haymaker and I'm vulnerable, he's going to hit me right back. And there's, let's see my stats, a 4% chance he knocks me out. Now, these numbers are coming from somewhere, so just bear with me. However, if I just continue to give him body shots and get to the 12th round and give him the occasional headshot, there's a 75% chance that I'm just going to wear him out and I'm going to win the match. Not by a KO, but I don't know enough about boxing. I probably should have picked a different analogy, Connor. But here's the thing. Like in the moment, I was like, what are you guys doing? Like, I get the Castillo is money from 50 plus. He had been 5 for 5 this year, and you can end the game by connecting on that field goal. But if you miss it, you have all your big guys in the middle of the field covering Khalil Pimpleton, who was an absolute burner, Connor. And just to punctuate that, the first guy on cover teams to go up to get to Pimpleton wasn't like a gunner. It was Jamison Sheehan, the punter, right? If your punter has the best shot at him, he's burst down the field, that's a problem. So at the time, I was like, what are you guys doing, right? Like, there's two other options here that seem much better, just off the top of my head, right? You can go for it on 3rd and 1.5, or you can punt it deep. And guess what? Your punter is having the game of his life. Pin him inside the 25, and you have a backup quarterback in Dustin Crum who's played well. He got 2 touchdowns. He led them on a long field goal drive, but it's Dustin Crum. And, less than a minute, you're asking the Ottawa offense to march it down the field on a defense that's having a pretty good day. You're asking him to score a touchdown? So that was the beginning of the game, or right after the game, sorry. And then when I was thinking about it longer, I was like, okay, Sergio Castillo's 5 for 5 on 50 plus field goals. We know he has ice in his veins, so he's not gonna get the yips in that moment. Okay. So 61% chance, and thanks to Derek Taylor for these stats. I mean, shout out to Derek Taylor, because we have a play-by-play guy who tracks all of the stats of the CFL. That's incredible. Yeah. Like, not only does he have all this talented charisma and voice talent and all that, and a friendly, likable guy, he's a football nerd. Like, for guys like, I don't know about you, but for guys like me who are trying to learn about the game and understand it better, like, shout out to Derek Taylor. Anyway, 61% chance you hit a 57-yarder. I think it's a higher number with Sergio Castillo, just how good he is on distance, right? And if you miss a field goal from 57, there's only a 4% chance the other team is going to come back for a touchdown. Okay. So when I think about it like that, I kind of softened on the call. Now, was Mike O'Shea thinking about those stats at the moment? Probably not. He was like, Castillo, good. Castillo made this in the pregame. He could do it. I'm not trying to make it sound like Fred Flintstone, but I don't think there was that much thought. It was like, yeah, Castillo can win the game. Let's try out Castillo. So I softened on it. Okay. I think it was really bad luck, but hindsight is 2020. The other, you asked about the 2nd and 3. So we debated this on Bonfire last night. So Streveler trots out there on 2nd and 3, and Derek Taylor was like, they get to 3rd and 1.5. So the chances of converting a 3rd and 1.5 is about 75%. Mm-hmm. Chances of kicking the field goal, 61%. Interesting numbers. But on 2nd and 3, when there's been a little bit of a struggle with Streveler in the wedge package recently, I don't know that I like that. But you kind of think the other team's a yard off the ball. They're probably thinking like, okay, we're going to get a 1.5 yards, 2 yards, and then we can go for it and kill even more clock on 3rd down. I understand the reasoning. I think the execution is poor. And the reason I say that is not because I'm a football genius, but because so Darren said this, is so much of the wedge and is the push from the offensive line.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this on PFF too, the grades of that interior offensive line. They haven't been good in run blocking. So they're not getting the push they need. And the other thing is there's no misdirection. There's nothing pulling the guys wide. There's no guy running a sweep. There's no receiver going out wide. Like I'm not saying it's that simple, but I'm saying like it seemed like Ottawa knew exactly where Streveler was going. So I think that context makes me question that second and three. What was working? You talked about this a little bit, getting Zach out of the pocket. What was working all game was that play action
Mhm.
because Ottawa kept stuffing the run up the middle. So there was play action. Zach went out to his right and was throwing dimes to Demski, guys like Stearns, even Mitchell got in there, right? So I think there was other options. You'd like to see an offense be able to convert. So I think if they were getting better push, I didn't mind it, but even maybe put in Terry Wilson because he seems to get good yardage on those short yardage. But that's kind of where I line up on that today. I might change my mind
Yeah.
tomorrow. We'll see. What do you think, buddy?
No, this is such an interesting, hot topic, and we Hustler and I debated this on Friday's edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk as well. I'm bringing up this still frame. If you're listening to this on podcast, I just have the photo up of Chris Streveler lining up on 2nd and 3 for that play where they're gonna, fight forward for as many yards as possible. And in the moment, I'll do the same progression that you did, Schnitzy. In the moment when I saw Chris Streveler run onto the field and then looked at the scoreboard and saw that it was going to be 2nd and 3, I thought, okay, they're gonna run Chris Streveler twice because Chris Streveler, on average, when doing short yardage, when in the Streveler package, gets maybe 1.5, 2 yards, right? But he's pretty money at getting 2 yards or getting 1.5 yards. So I thought the Bombers were going to say, we think Chris Streveler can get 1.5 yards or 2 or more in back-to-back plays, right? And I thought that was a pretty strong hypothesis from them. If that's where they were going, then he gets 1.5 yards. I mean, it ends up being 3rd and 1.5. This was a debate as well on Friday's WST. How far were they really? The scoreboard said 3rd and 1. It was more like 3rd and 1.5. I think if you were uncomfortable then with Chris Streveler going back to it, then I think you punt. I think you make Dustin Crum drive the length of the field. And Mike O'Shea after the game said, well, it's easier to kick a field goal from there than it is to punt for a single. I'm not necessarily saying they should punt for a single. They should pin him deep, make Dustin Crum go 90+ yards, and score to tie the game in under a minute or roughly a minute against a defense that, like you said, Schnitzy, was having a pretty good night up until this point. Instead of Sergio Castillo, who, yes, he's been money. He kicked a game winner. I just think there's too much risk there with a 57-yarder, which we're acting like is a chip shot. It's not.
Yeah.
I know Serge is money, but like that's a long
Yeah.
field goal. 63 yards in Calgary, like that tied a CFL record. Like this guy's awesome, but it's just too risky for me. And hey, Jamison Sheehan goes out, who's having the game of his life, like you said, Zach, and I agree. And say he does crank it through the end zone and it ends up being a single. Then Dustin Crum has to go down the field still, score a touchdown, and get a 2-point convert just to tie the game all in a minute. Again, when your defense is playing well. So I have the bigger issue with
2-pointer
and get the 2-point convert. Yeah. And I have a bigger issue. Well, not a bigger issue, but I don't have a bigger issue with the 2nd and 3. I have a bigger issue with the field goal. But I will say the 2nd and 3 being the Streveler package rubbed me the wrong way. I thought, a handoff to Brady, maybe you have a better chance of getting 3 yards, even though he was having a tough night. The play action,
still getting a 3-yard average, though.
He was still getting 3. Yeah. And the play action, like you said, Zach, was really working. You could fake Brady and throw into the flat to Demski, who's been money and was money all game long. I just thought there were better options than a Streveler sneak. But in the moment, I was okay with the Streveler sneak because if they were going to do it twice, I sitting there in section 208 was confident that they would get 3 or more yards if they ran Streveler twice in the short yardage. I thought that was the game plan. Maybe that was. And then O'Shea looked down the line, saw it was 1.5 yards and thought, let's trot Serge out there because he just hit a 63-yarder last week. I still would have liked to see a punt there and a better play call in 2nd and 3. but the Bombers got burned for it. But luckily, they have Zach Collaros and Nick Demski, who came up clutch on the final drive of the game and gave them the win. There was a lot to debate there when it comes to that 2nd and 3, and a lot of people up in section 208, and I'm sure wherever you were sitting, Zach, that, had their hands on their head going, what is going on? And the Bombers narrowly avoided the comeback. We almost saw the comeback 2.0 right before our very eyes, but they narrowly avoided it, and they are now 5-4 as they prepare for Montreal next week. And we're going to talk a little bit about the matchup later on in today's episode against Montreal, who, has QB questions. They're 5-4. We're recording this Friday night. They're going to play BC on Saturday night. So we obviously are recording this before that. We're not sure if they won or lost, but we will have another episode next Monday breaking down that game between the Bombers and the Alouettes.
Hey, can I just jump in on the punt there? I think you make a really good case for the punt, though the way you broke it down. I do think you go for the punt there. The way Sheehan was playing, you're playing Dustin Crum. Even if you give up a single, now they have to get a 2-pointer. They have to drive 70 yards in less than like a minute.
Yeah.
They were starting on their 40-yard line. Then you ask yourself, okay, well, how likely is it if we pin Ottawa deep? How likely is it that they're going to score a touchdown statistically? Well, Winnipeg allows a touchdown drive on 16%, or Ottawa, gets a touchdown on 16% of their drives. 16%. Yeah. With that crowd noise, that crowd noise caused 2 procedure and time count penalties. I think it got up to 147 at the game, which was awesome, right? I'm sure after your section folks were cheering. So you have a backup quarterback with a 16% chance of getting a touchdown. I think you'll take that, at the madhouse on Matheson, as Darren likes to call it. I'll take that. I will honestly take that. I think you punt. I think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. And another thing, and Jeff Hamilton has brought this up on Winnipeg Sports Talk many times, whether it's, the Jason Hogan play call to take a deep shot against the Argos out of the 3-minute warning, or it's putting Zach Collaros back in the Grey Cup with a torn off finger, whatever it is, there's no, maybe we should have done that differently from Mike O'Shea. He loved trotting Sergio Castillo out there for the 57-yarder. Why? Because he did it in warm-up, like you said, Zach, because Serge is good. I think that was the thought that went into it. Serge is good. And then the DPIs as well. Doug Brown was asking him about both DPIs. Why didn't you challenge? And he thought they were both DPIs. And I would like to hear Mike O'Shea, who I know doesn't care what people think about him. I would like to I think I and a lot of Bomber fans would just like to hear him say every once in a while, if we had a do-over, we probably would have punted that ball there. Or if I had a do-over, I probably should have challenged one of those 2 defensive pass interferences. It took a miraculous goal line stop on 3 straight plays to not get burned by that first DPI on Ottawa's drive there early in the game. So I don't know. I know Mike O'Shea has been like this for 5+ years, and he's not going to change, and I know he doesn't care, but I do think Bomber fans, I think it's worth noting, because I think Bomber fans would like to hear that every now and again, rather than, we liked our process, even when it clearly didn't work out for them. But that's something we'll watch going forward, because the decision-making from both Jason Hogan and Mike O'Shea and Jordan Younger, all the coordinators and coaches, is something that we've monitored throughout the season and will continue to monitor going forward for sure. It's time for our first segment of WST Bombers Report, Zach, and that is the buy or sell. This is the segment where I pepper Zach with statements or questions about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and he lets me know whether he's buying or selling. So the first one I'm going to hit you with, Zach, is, are the Bombers legit? And this is something that I think you can punt this one if you'd like, because I think we're going to find out after the Labor Day Banjo Bowl. So I don't think now is the best time for this question, but I present this question because they are 5-1 against everyone not named the Calgary Stampeders. Having said that, they haven't beat a team that's over 500 yet. They beat BC twice, Edmonton, Toronto, and now Ottawa. And again, they're going up against Montreal, Saskatchewan twice, Hamilton a few times. The schedule definitely gets tough the back half of the year. But are you buying or selling the Bombers being better or worse than their record indicates at 5-4, having not beat a team over 500, but really only having lost to one team in the CFL, one of the best in Calgary, 3 times?
I think they are legit. I'm not pushing all my chips and I'm not going all in. I think they are legit. I mean, if I think about, yeah, Calgary is a really, really good defense, and Winnipeg's had some injuries on the O line and receiver. They put together a decent offensive performance Thursday night, Connor.
Mm.
And, you know, if you think about that Calgary game in Calgary last week, I mean, they by rights should have won that game up 17-0 and hitting a field goal 63-yarder with a minute and 1 second left. If they win that game, they're 6-3, right? And they're battling for second place. So I don't think the Bombers are that far off. This game now, I know Ottawa came in at 3-6, right? But Ottawa was coming off 2 straight wins. That offense was humming. And I know Drew Brown got injured a bit, but Dustin Crum was having himself a good game. I think the Bombers did enough in this last game, Connor, despite the lulls in offensive production in the middle of the game again, which has become a problem. I think they did enough to make me a little bit more of a believer.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know. This is something that I'm going to take this next week between now and the game against the Alouettes, and really heading into Labor Day Banjo Bowl, debating throughout this season, because they've had a ton of injuries. You know, Dalton Schoen has barely played. They've had so many injuries in the secondary with Bonds and Parker, like you said, Schnitzy. And I do think that this team, I don't know if they're better than their record indicates. I got to see the games against the Riders. I just got to see the game
Yeah.
against the Riders. You know,
Yeah,
like
well said.
if the Bombers can split the 2 games, and maybe the game that they lose out of those 2 is close, and the game that they win is close, then it's like, okay, they're right there and they split, right? But if they get blown out in both or win both big, then that'll really change my perception one way or the other. It's to be determined for me on whether or not the Bombers are better or worse than their 5-4 record, despite how weird it is having lost 1 time or 3 times to one team over the course of the season, and we're only 11 weeks in. The next up on our buy or sell segment is Jason Hogan redeemed himself for this performance. Coming out of the Toronto game, the Calgary game in the second half, I still didn't like a lot of the second half in this game against Ottawa. Zach, I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but are you buying or selling that Jason Hogan redeemed himself for some tough performances with this win in Winnipeg against Ottawa?
I'm selling it for now. I'm not at the ledge with like jumping off the ledge with Jason Hogan like I was last week. Like I said, like they had 3 touchdown drives, they had a decent amount of yardage. They mixed the play calling up well. The thing that concerns me is, as you talked about this, was like in the middle of the game again, you had the Bombers get out to that big 17-0 lead. But after that, they really struggled to move the ball. They had a number of 2-and-outs. And again, this turnover issue, these interceptions are really killing the Bombers. And I think if you have a performance like that, where you have 231 yards offense in the first half, but only 131 in the second half, then you talked about Saskatchewan. Saskatchewan's going to stuff the run on you. They're the best run defense in the CFL. Zach's going to have to beat them with his arm, and Hogan is going to have to find ways to get Zach to be effective with those receivers. And if you have those lulls and you have those interceptions, I think Saskatchewan will destroy the Bombers. I hate to say it because it's the Riders and we hate them, but I honestly think that type of offensive performance is not going to win you games against the Saskatchewans and the Hamiltons, and even next week against Montreal, which we'll get to.
Yeah, absolutely. That was buy or sell. Thank you, everyone. I mean, take part down below in the comments. Let me know if you're buying or selling the Bombers at their current record of 5-4, and let me know if you're buying or selling Jason Hogan's stock after a win and maybe a redeeming performance. But Schnitzy says he's selling for now, and I agree with you. Gotta see it against Montreal's strong defense and the 2 Saskatchewan games coming up, a really, really crucial stretch for the Bombers here. Now it's time to transition right into our very next segment, and that is the Blue Crew Review. And this is the part of the show, it's one of my favorite parts of the show, where we take questions from the fans. I put out a tweet after every single Bomber game. This one was the next morning because I needed the night to just, sit with my own thoughts on this football game. But the next morning, I put out a tweet asking for questions regarding the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and we're going to answer as many as we can here on the WST Bombers Report. The first one is from Bernie, Bernie, who I know, Section 208. I said with him, big Jamal Parker fan. Thank you for the question.
Oh, yeah.
He says, lots to unpack, but one item for discussion. Tanner Schmekel, number 96, needs to play more, he says. He blew through a double team on his sack and blocked a kick. I think Jordan Younger needs to slowly transition from Jake Thomas, even though Thomas is still playing well, or use an import elsewhere. And he adds hashtag Schmekled. I will let you take this one, Zach, because I know on the post-game show you were all over Tanner Schmekel. You were a big fan of this performance. Where are you at with him?
I love that question, Bernie. Shout out to 208. Sounds like you're a fun guy to watch the game with, which is gotta, like, isn't that what it's all about, right? Like I'll bring a different buddy to every game to 128 where I sit, and it's like high-fiving people as they come in. How's it going? Well, it's like a family. So that's awesome. Shout out to Bernie. I love Schmekel's game, and I think we need that from a Canadian interior lineman. Jake Thomas still can be productive, and I think he had a really good game. I saw him break through a double team in this game. I saw him knock down a pass. He has flashes, but the reality is he's getting older, right? Like, I still remember Jake Thomas from 2012 when he started for this team, right? Like, it's 2025, so I think I was skeptical of Schmekel. I didn't think he'd ever done much for the Bombers, but they must have seen something in him, and I thought he had a great game. I mean, that sack was huge. That was almost a safety. So I'd like to see more Schmekel. I think he's earned himself another week.
Hashtag Schmekled. There we go.
Yeah.
Get it going. Get it trending. I will say, yeah, anytime you can get, whether it's Cam Allen in the secondary or Schmekel on the D-line or maybe Cramdy moving to linebacker, anytime you can get depth at positions and be able to rotate players in and out and rotate the defense, keep players fresh when the offense is going 2 and out every other drive in the second half and you're on the field a ton, having options and having depth at that position is huge. And if Schmekel can keep this going, not, getting a crucial sack and a punt block every single game, but can be effective in the run game and maybe create some pressure on the QB, that could be great for the depth of the D-line of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, where through the first 5 weeks, we were looking, it's Willie Jefferson and who else right now? And now slowly things are starting to come along on that D-line. Again, I thought they really dominated the first half of that game, and then we're on the field a ton in the second half. But a strong performance from the defense, and Tanner Schmekel, number 96, someone to watch for going forward. The second question is from Elliot, who I think has submitted a question every single episode. Shout out Elliot, loyal WST Bombers Report listener. He asks, while most of this game had positives, do we take a ton of stock into the collapse at the end of the game? Essentially 2 weeks in a row, but 2 different ways the Bombers have done it. So, Zach, how much stock do you take in to the collapse, really in a second straight game? But as Elliot notes, and very smartly to do so, the Calgary one felt like a death by 1,000 paper cuts. This one was, everything all at once, once the 3-minute warning hit, and suddenly it was a tie game. So how much stock do you take in a back-to-back collapses, even though they were done differently?
Yeah, I don't take much stock in them. Like, I think I don't mind like you said, Connor, like the defense was on the field a lot. Like Ottawa, they beat us in time of possession by 5 minutes, right? So the defense was on the field a lot. There were, but the way that they played the Ottawa offense with the backup quarterback is, as they said, Dustin Crum, like, dink and dunk, nickel and dime your way down the field and see if you can score a touchdown. You probably won't because you're Dustin Crum. Well, Dustin Crum was effective, like he getting productive on first down, hitting guys over the middle in second, like getting 6-7 yards a pop, and credit Dustin Crum, like they made that work, and they had a nice field goal drive as well. But really, I think that this game should never have been in doubt. Even up 27-20, the Bombers had a chance to punt it and pin Crum deep, and he probably doesn't get a touchdown there, or they convert on 2nd and 3 or 3rd and a yard and a half. and then the game's essentially over with maybe another first down. So
Mhm.
I just think, maybe my answer is this: Winnipeg maybe beat themselves more than Ottawa had this epic comeback.
Okay, I like that answer. I do think that it's concerning, and it's something that every time they have a 17-0 lead or more going forward, we're gonna be sitting there going, "Oh boy, all right, can they finish this one off?" But, I guess this is one step towards, the learning how to win process, which the Bombers have done a lot of, but they do have a younger team this year, and they have a lot of new faces in this lineup. So maybe a new team needs to learn how to win over again, and maybe this is
Yeah.
just part of the lumps throughout the season that they need to go through to do that. I will say that it is a concern for me that back-to-back weeks, two different
Yeah.
ways they've collapsed, and especially going back earlier to my earlier point, I should say, about the offense in the second half. This is the second week in a row that coming out of halftime, the opposing defense has made adjustments and the Bombers have looked lost. They had one good drive thanks to the Tanner Schmekel sack and good field position that ended in a Brady Oliveira touchdown, his first of the season, but just not enough right there from that Bombers offense in the second half in particular. The final question is from Jay David, who asks advice for Bomber fans regarding Bombers events / parties for people driving out to the toilet bowl, as they call it, on Labor Day. Jay David also adds that they're not taking the 1930 bus, but I know you, Zach, and Hustler are taking the 1930 crew bus along with Darren Bombing from Bonfire Sports. So any advice for Bomber fans, either coming with you guys on the 1930 bus or just going to Regina on their own accord, heading out for the Labor Day Classic in 2 weeks now?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Jay. I'll give a quick plug to the 1930 crew. We still got to get you out there, Connor, but your
Yeah.
family keeps having weddings and events on this weekend, which is bonkers to me. Like, give their head a shake, right?
Next
It's just
year.
such a good time. There's next year there's a couple spots left of the 1930 crew. Email them or go to the website, the 1930crew.com. Just an amazing, unforgettable experience. It takes care of all your needs. You don't have to worry about driving or getting to the game or where you're going to go or how much
Mhm.
how much booze there's going to be. We're very responsible though in the 1930 crew. Don't worry.
I like how you got
The
serious
driver
there for a second. We're
is not
very
drinking.
responsible. Very responsible.
Very
Yeah.
responsible. If you are going to Labor Day, so last year with the 1930 crew was my very first Labor Day, if you can believe it,
Mm.
being a crazy fan that I am. What I found was there was a lot going on the Saturday night before. You might want to check out Crave Kitchen and Bar because that's where the Bombers took over
Okay.
in Regina. They were, if you came in with your Bombers gear, they were offering you free beer. Wade Miller was there, Derek Taylor was there, Rod Smith, Paul LaPolice, Darren Cameron. So you got to hobnob with the CFL elite there, all really friendly people. So that might be something to check out. Check out the Bombers socials because they'll tell you which bar they're taking over the night before. And then check out a good brunch option. If you go to the Four Seasons, there's lots of local restaurants. Go get your brunch, then maybe get your game on, and then you have to go to Wayne's World.
Mhm.
What's Wayne's World? It's not a restaurant. It's not a bar. It's literally a Rider fan's backyard near the stadium where you can go and party with like 200 people. So Wayne's World is out of this world. I will say you have to experience Wayne's World. People will tell you where it is, and yeah, it started out with the story, Connor. Not to belabor this, but the story is that there was like 5 or 6 Bomber
Belabor.
fans like 20 years ago.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's good, eh?
Nice.
I didn't even mean to
Nice.
do that.
Nicely
I
done.
didn't
Yeah,
even
just
mean that.
slide it in there. Belabor for Labor Day. Just slide it in there like a true professional. Go
Yeah.
ahead. Yeah, keep it going. Yeah.
Very good. I didn't even try and do that, so I can't take
Oh,
credit.
man.
Um, 5 or 6 Bomber fans were drinking in a back lane outside a guy's backyard, and the police came up. I'm like, "What do you guys? You can't just drink out here." And apparently Wayne saw this and was like, "Oh no, they're on their way into my backyard or something." So then they started with a bunch of Bomber fans drinking in some guy's backyard. Some guy named Wayne last year was 20 years, and now there's 200 plus people. There's speeches by guys like Golden Boy who dresses up, comes from Portage. And does a speech standing on a fence or something, like all in gold paint. It's just amazing, man. And then of course enjoy the game. It is a nice stadium. It's not as nice as ours, but I'm biased. It does look like a toilet bowl, but and they are nice fans. Like as long as you're respectful, they're nice
Right.
fans. Those would be my Labor Day recommendations.
I've heard some. I've never been to a Labor Day game, as you noted, and I'm still very, very jealous of you all that have been and are going this year in the 1930 crew. But I have heard some horror stories from back in the day in terms of, like fans going at one another. But I feel I truly haven't heard many of those stories as of late. As it seems like both sides, even here for the Banjo Bowl, seems to have gotten more respectful over the years. I might add, as someone who grew up with my family going to Labor Day and me not wanting to go, I feel totally fine if I were to go now. And I'm really looking forward to hopefully going next year on the 1930 crew because that sounds like a very, very fun trip. Anyways, that was the Blue Crew review. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. We really, really appreciate it. And stay tuned. Next week, Thursday night, the Bombers take on the Montreal Alouettes. And I'll be putting out a tweet after the game asking for more questions if you want your question featured on the next WST Bombers Report. Drop your question there, and we will answer as many as we can right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Zach, before we go, just a quick thought on the matchup next week as the Bombers travel to Montreal. Again, Caleb Evans is getting the start on Saturday night. We're recording this Friday night. Caleb Evans getting the start Saturday night against the BC Lions. So we can't really analyze how the Montreal Alouettes did in their last week because we're recording this beforehand. But just thoughts on the matchup as the Bombers take on the Alouettes next week on the road.
I'm going to take a wider view of this one rather than getting too granular with the stats because I think this game is huge for Winnipeg, both psychologically in terms of building off what they did last night. Connor, was it a flash in the pan? Is it sustainable? Are they back? They've got to stack up wins, especially against vulnerable Eastern teams like Montreal playing with Caleb Evans, who's their third stringer for a reason, right? Historically, he hasn't been a very, very effective quarterback. The defense played well against Drew Brown and Dustin Crum. I thought they need to win this game, not only psychologically, but also to keep pace. If they have any hope of hosting a playoff game this year, whether it's second or, less likely first place in the West, they need this game. They need to get to 6-4. They need to be in position because they do have the advantage of playing Saskatchewan 3 times. Their destiny in some ways might be in their own hands if Calgary falters at all, and Calgary maybe isn't going to. But in terms of the standings and the way the last half of this season sets up, Carter, this is absolutely huge. And I think I'm confident the defense can step up and stop a Caleb Evans run offense. But it's Montreal's defense that you really got to watch for. I mean, this is arguably the #1 defense in the CFL, and they are second in the CFL against the rush. We know that teams like to stuff the box or load the box and stop Brady Oliveira. Zach Collaros is going to need to have a good game again, arguably better than the game against Ottawa because Montreal's defense is just that good. So Jason Hogan is going to have to continue to open up the playbook, get Zach out of the pocket because our O-line, I think, is a little bit vulnerable this year. Get creative with getting Demski the ball, and the other receivers have to continue to step up. Wheatfall, Stearns, let's get Dylan Mitchell going. Clercius, like those guys, particularly Clercius and Mitchell have been somewhat invisible. So they're going to need to find ways to, they're not going to have to score 30 points. I don't think Evans is going to put up that many points, but they're going to have to get 3 touchdown drives, maybe get a turnover on defense, and special teams continue to play solid. And I think they should arguably win this game. I think I'd be very disappointed if they didn't.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see what, the cool bet line is going into this game. I am fascinated to see that with Caleb Evans, albeit at home, third string quarterback. And Montreal, as of late, has really been pretty up and down. I mean, they lost to Edmonton at home last week, and that was the game MBT threw the pick 6 to Tyrell Ford, former Winnipeg Blue Bomber, and Cody Fajardo threw to Julian Grant. Basically, his time expired with 20 seconds left, and the Elks won 23-22. The week before that, the Alouettes got blown out at home by the Rough Riders, 34-6. The week before that, they beat the Stamps on the road, but that was the game Vernon Adams left and did not return, and they barely beat them by 2. But again, a win is a win. Week before that, they beat the Argos. Week before that, they lost to the Lions by 1. The week before that, they got blown out by the Ticats by 2 touchdowns. So they've been up and down. I mean, Davis Alexander is still out with an injury. We're not expecting him to play next week. I'm sure it's going to be Caleb Evans. McLeod Bethel-Thompson's on the 6-game injured list, so it won't be him. They did sign Cameron Dukes, but I would not expect him to play. I think they'll be going with Caleb Evans until Davis Alexander returns, which we don't really know what the timeline is there, but he could be returning soon for the Montreal Alouettes. We will have you covered right here on the WST Bomber Report next Monday, breaking down that game, the Bombers and the Alouettes. We will see if the Bombers can make it 6-4 or if they fall back to 5-5 heading into the Labor Day Banjo Bowl home and home. Zach, this has been a great episode. Any final words on the way out as the Bombers prepare for Montreal, and then we get into the best time of the year, Labor Day Banjo Bowl? I can't wait.
Yeah, I'd like to see the Bombers win this game. I'd like to see them win it with authority to show that what Saskatchewan did to Montreal, Winnipeg is right up there. And then psychologically going into that Labor Day game saying, hey, we have some confidence right now. Like, we stacked a couple wins together. We've put together some drives. We've made the stops on defense. And we can go into Regina and shock those pesky riders. And last thing I'll say, Connor, is I think I'm going to email the Hrabchak clan and just say, like, listen, if you're planning on having a wedding or a family reunion or whatever, just don't do it on Labor Day, please. No. Connor has to experience Labor Day with the 1930 crew, so we'll make it happen.
Let's do it. We're doing it next year. You can book it, and I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, the Bombers take on the Alouettes. Then, of course, like we've said many times, Labor Day Banjo Bowl, home and home. Then they go on the road to Hamilton. They're on the road in Ottawa. They're at home to Hamilton, on the road in Edmonton, home to Saskatchewan again. So they play them 3 times between now and the end of the season. And a win on Thursday brings the Bombers to 6-4 and absolutely within striking distance of the Rough Riders, albeit they've only lost 1 game. Again, they play Saturday as well against Hamilton, the best team in the East. So we'll see how they fare in that game. But at 6-4, even if Saskatchewan wins all their games going into Labor Day Banjo Bowl, you're still within striking distance with 3 games against them to sweep them, and that could change your season the same way it did for Calgary sweeping the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. But we will be breaking that all down every single Monday right here on the WST Bombers Report. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the stream, make sure you hit the like button down below. Drop a comment, your thoughts on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers win over the Ottawa Redblacks. And if you want any sponsorship opportunities with Winnipeg Sports Talk, hit us up at winnipegsportstalk@gmail.com if you want to sponsor WST Bombers Report. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next Monday breaking down Bombers and Alouettes. Enjoy the game this week. See you on Monday.